Good afternoon and welcome to the Team-Based Peoplevox webinar, Making a More Efficient E-commerce Warehouse, What You Should Know. And thrilled today to be joined by two experienced people, Oliver Rhodes and Melissa Burton. Oliver, you are a fulfillment consultant for Peoplevox. Tell us a bit about yourself. Where have you come from? What do you do?
So I was quite fortunate in 2010 to meet Jonathan Bellwood, who founded Peoplevox, and over the period of the last 8 years, we've worked with over 140 e-commerce companies all over the world. And in terms of what I actually do day to day, apart from being involved with the business right from the start, so wearing every hat from support through to implementation to helping people understand a little bit more about how to run an e-commerce warehouse, and then also, of course, helping them implement technology that delivers against those best practices. Um, Day to day, that's where I'm focused, spending time with companies who want to understand a lot more about how they can put processes in place, usually to scale their businesses. We often find people in a place where they don't know how to grow until they make that improvement. And then I also work a lot with partners that I'll talk about in a bit, understanding how the other technology that sits around the warehouse system fits into ours is a key part of my role.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. And we've also got Melissa, who is from Lingerie Outlet Store. Melissa, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Hello. So Lingerie Outlet Store. We're a multi-platform lingerie retailer, independent company. We've grown quite significantly, particularly in the last 2 years. We've had over 2,000% growth in our company. Um, Alongside that, we've also doubled the size of our warehouse, more than tripled the size of our team, and we currently sell lingerie, core fashion products across the UK and globally for most of the most common known brands, Playtex, Wonderbra, etc. Um,
And I believe congratulations in order because you were announced as one of the new eBay millionaires this year, which means you turn over more than £1 million just on eBay alone.
Absolutely. So we did have quite significant press coverage just over a month ago, and yes, on eBay we are now turning over more than 1 million a year. To put that into context, 2 years ago as a company, we were turning over 51,000. So it's quite a significant growth in the last 2 years.
Fantastic. And doing £1 million on eBay alone, plus the other places you sell, that must mean you've got a pretty busy warehouse. And I think one of the challenges that people have nowadays is um, the growth in customers and the expectations that customers have on the delivery experience and wanting next day delivery, wanting faster delivery and more delivery options. And that must put a bit of a challenge on not just your warehouse, but a lot of our listeners' warehouses as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Customers today, they expect to be able to order, they want their order to ship pretty much instantly, and they want it to arrive quickly. They don't want to buy online and be told that their item's not in stock. So it's vitally important to know what stock you have, where that stock is. You need to be able to access it quickly, and you need to be able to get it out to your customers as soon as possible.
So today we're going to be looking at making your stockroom or your warehouse more efficient. Um, Oliver, you've done a fulfillment report that's looked at loads of businesses. Tell us a bit about the findings from that report and what you actually found.
So we did the fulfillment report earlier this year, and the aim was for the first time to go out and particularly it was focused on the UK market primarily, but it also took in companies all over the world. We've got clients in 24 different countries, so we at least know there were that many different countries involved in it. And the aim was to do what Metapack have done with the delivery piece, where there's been so much focus. I think there's almost too much information about all these different delivery options and last mile, and you can't move for people talking about putting drones in the sky and shipping parcels out to people within an hour. But actually, if you go online and you try and find out what are the different picking methods to use in a warehouse, it's quite hard to find that kind of information. So this was our first snapshot at what's the kind of state of fulfillment, what do people understand, what are the methodologies that people are using. And I think, like any broad report, what you pull out of it is going to be really dependent on your own personal experience. So I think if you're kind of intrigued as to, well, what are other people doing? If you've got that question of how does Surf Dome operate? How are Gymshark or Lingerie Outlet Store doing things behind the scenes? I think if you look at that report, you'll be able to see when you've got a question, do you do it A, B, C, or D? Usually the D answer is the optimum way to be doing it. And one of the things you've got in e-commerce is you can't just go and walk around other people's warehouses. And in essence, that's what we've been able to do by getting that information and putting it into one place.
Fantastic. And I think there's a link for the report on the screen. I think one of the most interesting things is that 2/3 of people say they're not always shipping on time, maybe because they just can't find the inventory, or they've lost track of their inventory, or being out of stock, which is, you just can't do that nowadays, can you? Because customers, once you've bought something, they're expecting it to arrive.
Well, the first part to that is that most companies get their manual systems, so pen and paper or sequence pick sheets. You get to a stage where you can get, on a quiet day, you can get 90% of your orders out on time, no problems. And I always say to people that a manual system with perfect human beings is the fastest system. If we don't ever have to go to a computer or a piece of software, humans are lightning fast. But the reality is that there's then that other 10% that they can't find where the issues occur. And when you stack that up over a 5-day working week, what you find is that the order that went wrong on Monday is still not being dealt with by Wednesday. And by Thursday, they're on Trustpilot and they're enraged, or they've emailed eBay or Amazon. And that's where the pain starts to come, kind of not having the time to deal with the problem orders. I don't know whether that's...
Well, that's what is exactly what happened to us. We got to a point where we had a couple of hundred orders every day. So 80% of that was easy. You'd go out and you'd find the order, mainly because people remembered where they'd put it as opposed to anything else. But then you'd be left with this 20%. So then you've got a stack of invoices, some of which you've partially found, some which were complete orders that you couldn't find. And then it just became a fight for who can remember where we might have put this stuff. So then you've got people running around the warehouse trying to remember where you've put it. Then you've got a stack of orders, and we could have 60, 65 orders that were sat on the side, invoices, some with a top piece, a bra with no briefs, or some with briefs and no bra. Then you have to email the customer. Then you have to wait for the customer to respond and get back to you. So your whole life becomes a cycle of trying to deal with this 20% of orders that you just can't find. Meanwhile, particularly, you mentioned customer feedback, but particularly if you sell on Amazon and eBay, you cannot not have something in stock, and you cannot not ship it on time. So it's vital that you can find it and that you can get it out the door, preferably by 2 p.m. same day.
And I think especially a lot of businesses on eBay will have started off with one person. It's my business, and I put stuff in the warehouse and I know where everything is. But then as soon as you start getting staff and you've got 2 or 3 employees, they've not got everything in their head that you've got. So what we're going to look at today is 3 things. First of all, how to optimize your warehouse. Then how to when you should be considering a dedicated WMS system, And then we're going to talk to you a bit more, Melissa, about the lessons that you learned setting up your warehouse. Um, how I know you joined the business with Claire, and it's already an existing business and growing fast. So it'd be interesting to know how you've taken it from there to some more robust systems. So first of all, we're going to take a look at warehouse efficiencies and whether you're in a small warehouse, which could be your spare bedroom or your garage or a small lockup, or whether you've got a larger warehouse, some tips that can actually help you get the best out of your warehouse. So Oliver, you're obviously the guy that knows warehousing from the Peoplevox side most of all. What would your top tip be for the number one tip that anyone with a warehouse, whatever size, should be thinking of doing?
Ooh, top tip. Yeah, but top tip's hard, Chris. I'm gonna go for failing everything else. I think the first top tip is to try and find the right person to come in with the personality to operationally organize the business. And it's not just about organizing the warehouse. You need to think about how all the handshakes between the different departments are going to work. If the customer service team don't have that proven line of communication to the warehouse, for example, when a customer calls up to try and cancel an order, any exception that comes up is going to cause us a problem.
So yeah, I think that's really interesting, Oliver. Um, the getting someone in charge, and then I think I know when I was selling full time on eBay, there were some really basic things I did. Like I had some products which I sold every single day, and I actually kept them on my packing desk or a supply of them because I knew that every day I'd be wanting them, and I could literally just reach out my hand and grab them and package them. And I guess, Melissa, you've got a big warehouse. Do you organise it by lines that you have popular selling lines, or how do you make yours run more efficiently?
Well, so what we used to do in the olden days, we used to put everything together because at least then we could try and remember where it was. But now we have the granularity of having everything traceable. We minimize, we've gone to smaller pick bins. We have smaller volume of products in smaller pick bins, so it's easier to find the product you're looking for in the pick bin. We have a two-tier system so that the high volume of products stays somewhere else that we replenish every day. We make sure that our most popular products are near the door, that people can easily access them. We make sure that similar shaped products are together, which may not be the same product, but at least they stack nicely and conveniently in the pick bins. We actually thought, because we grew so organically, technically we thought that our warehouse wasn't great because we kind of thought we needed a big football arena, and sometimes it's a bit of a warren, but actually that works really well for us now because we can really distribute the stock into a logical place, but quickly and efficiently pick it because we know exactly where it is.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of really interesting things you said there, and the top tip there is getting the most out of the warehouse you've already got. You don't necessarily need a bigger warehouse or a warehouse with loads of automated packaging machines. If you can organise your warehouse well, you can get much more out of the space you've got.
Every time, every company I go to see, it's almost a guarantee that if they've been growing quickly, everyone's getting a bit excited about a warehouse move and how we're going to need to make this next step to take on the new warehouse and all of the excitement that comes with that, and how they're going to leave all the problems of the existing warehouse behind. And there are three ways that can play out. One is they stay excited and they move to a new warehouse. But if you move to the new warehouse with the old habits, you find that all of those systems that you had using Google Sheets and all the logic that was applied before, when you increase your space 5 times, the problem's 5 times worse. So that's like option 1 to go with. Option 2 is within the space you've already got, maximizing how you're using it. And like if you look at even just the picture on the screen now, you've got shoes stacked like that. That's actually not a good example of how to store shoes, in my opinion. Because what happens if the shoes you need are at the back, or you can only have one style of shoe in each slot? You can't easily get to the ones behind. So like almost every client we work with that's got shoes, we recommend these drawers that you can pull out, where when you pull out the drawer you can see all of the different sizes of shoes. Basic things like that. Like I would guess they're, even just on the shoe storage, they're probably wasting 20% of their space. So there's that to consider. And usually when you sit down with an owner and you discuss delaying a warehouse move by 6 months, they quite like the sound of that, because it means they're not having to invest in the space they don't necessarily need, and the overhead and the risk. Third option is some people never find efficiency in their existing space. They find it all too difficult, and they end up taking what I would consider an easy way out with their fulfillment, which is going to a third party and washing their hands of it. And in the process of doing that, if you haven't made your warehouse efficient, the first thing you're giving the third party is the ability to have a huge efficiency gain using a system that, as Melicia's shown, and anyone else who's got a warehouse system, you can do that yourself. You don't need to go to someone else in order to get that efficiency gain. So they're the three ways it plays out around optimizing how you're using space.
And I think the other thing you said that was really interesting, Melissa, is don't put all of your stock out at one time. Would you care to explain that a little bit more for anyone that missed the point?
So obviously we sell bras, so we may have tens of particular sizes. What we would do previously would put a particular style together, because we'd have to remember where we'd put it. Now what we will do is we'll put one or two of each size of each style in a different location. So when the picker goes to a location, there will be 5 different coloured products and 2 of each size. What we need to do is we need to be able to pick efficiently. In the old days, we spent all day, every day picking. We can now get, we have 10 times as many orders now every day, but actually our pick's done pretty much in the first hour. So our overnight pick from the day before is done with the first hour, and then the majority of the rest of the day now is spent replenishing all our pick faces, so that tomorrow morning we've got 2 or 3 of every product there and ready and waiting, so we can get it dispatched as soon as possible.
And the other thing I guess that does is, if you've got 100 of one type of product but you generally only sell 4 or 5 a day, you've not got all of that 100 taking up shelf space at the front of the warehouse. It can the remainder can be packed.
Exactly. So we went from big bins to little bins, so everything's in as small a bin as possible, and then we used to have, everything used to be the same. So you imagine if you go into a large bin and you've got 250 bras in there, they're all the same colour, but they're all a different size. The picker has to go through every single bra to find the one that they want. Now they'll go into a really small bin that might only take up a few inches on the front of the shelf. They go into the small bin, they're looking for something blue, there'll be 2 blue items in there, they can pick it out straight away.
So it's almost like having a little mini warehouse for today within your bigger warehouse. You've got tons and tons of stock, but most of what you're going to need today is just in that little section.
Yeah.
Make it a lot more efficient. I guess that does, however, bring in some other problems, which is if you're putting stock all over the place, how do you remember what's where in the warehouse? And I guess that's one step that comes into using some software to actually help remember things are. So Oliver, for those that don't know, tell us a bit more about what a warehouse management system is.
From a manual warehouse where people are remembering what is where, the simple way to think about a warehouse management system is that it replaces the memory of all of your warehouse staff, which is quite useful if they've been out on a Thursday night for a few beers and they're struggling to find things on a Friday.
I guess that also goes back to one of the early points I made, that when it was just me it's easy, but now I've got 5, 10, 15 staff, suddenly it becomes a lot more difficult for me to impart my knowledge of where everything is to them.
The hardest is when you have rapid growth periods and you have a large number of staff that have to come in quickly to get your orders out, and you have no mechanism to share the information.
Yeah, that's the. If you think about a warehouse running a manual system with everything in people's heads, I imagine that as like a dark warehouse where the rest of the business, anything they want to find out, they have to go down to it and they have to feel around, speak to everybody to plan anything out. And implementing a warehouse management system takes every piece of inventory that you have, and it means you know exactly which location it's in your warehouse because it's all perfectly mapped out. And if anyone at any point wants to know where the Wonder Bra is in the 34 double D, they don't need to go down to the warehouse to ask. They can pick up, in the example there, you pick up the app and you type in exactly what you're looking for and it will tell you exactly where it is. And it sounds so basic, but when you're working in the dark environment where everyone's having to shout at each other to find out where someone's put something, it really can transform not just how the business is operating, but the environment that you're working in, which I think is a benefit that a lot of companies underestimate before they put the system in.
And I think there's a number of things that this gives you, which, first and foremost, how do you know what stock you've got? And the great thing is with software, it knows exactly what stock you've got at any minute of the day.
Yep.
It knows what's sold, what's on the pick list, what's packed and about to go out the door today, what's coming in on returns, and a much better overview of your stock rather than having to go around and do manual stock checks day after day.
So it's another layer, right? So when it's not you in the warehouse, you've then got other people that you want visibility into what they're working on. Now, if you've got a sales team in your business, in a traditional B2B model, you know how many calls they make a day, and every time they make a call or they make a sale, they log it, you can track their productivity. And yet, when you go into a manual warehouse environment, in the same way it's dark on inventory, it's dark on what all the people are going on. Like, you're hiring and firing people and training people based on gut feel and instinct versus actually, you know, how many orders did you pick today? Or how many items have you received, and being in a position to actually manage the team. And you know, if you think your warehouse team, once it goes beyond 5 people, it's not a small team anymore. You're going to be putting in a warehouse manager. And another symptom of, you know, the next thing that comes with that is if you don't shine the light on what's going on in there, you then start to add more management layers. So you have, you know, a team of 15 with 2 supervisors and a manager, you know, which is you know, frankly laughable. Given what's possible if you've got a system, you can start to, you know, reduce how many of the more expensive headcounts you've got and focus on just a few key people that you can trust.
Fantastic. So we've talked a bit about the benefits of a WMS system, but how do you know when it's actually time for one? I mean, it sounds great having this software solution in place and like everyone would love it.
Yeah.
But when is it that I'm growing and I should just be optimising my warehouse? And how do I know when actually, if I make the jump now to software, that the benefits are going to be so great that I'll wonder why I could never do without it?
Yeah. So the trend, there's a few trends that I'm seeing. So we talk about in our business, one of the biggest challenges of what we do is most of the companies who need what we do don't know they need what we do. Like they don't even know what a warehouse management system is or what the benefits are. Yeah, if you've run a traditional logistics operation before, that is by no means going to guarantee that you understand how an e-commerce fulfillment center should be operating. And so knowing when is the time, I think, and for every company it's different. So it varies depending on the size of your warehouse, the products that you sell, the margin on the product is really important. The people that you hire, you know, you can prolong your existence with a manual system by hiring good people, although eventually they may burn out if you push them too hard on managing without one. And then also your plans, like what is your not just your roadmap of growth, but also your roadmap of technology. And it's a very rare thing in e-commerce to meet a company, particularly a smaller one, who have thought about, from where they are now to 5 years from now, what are the technology changes that they need to make along the way. And I think people very much get caught in what's the next system I need. And where we're starting to work with companies a lot sooner than we used to. We've signed up a company last week who are doing 150 orders a day, also doing underwear. And Melissa's looking at me now with a scowl. We'll talk about it afterwards. And for them, even though they've got one or two people in the warehouse on a busy day, they're like, well, it can save us a third person. And the two owners worked out it meant they won't ever have to be involved in the warehouse. And they quite like the sound of that, because it's taken them out at an earlier stage.
And I mean, you mentioned a level of orders there of 150 orders a day.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing that does depend a bit on the type of product, because if you're selling, say, USB memory sticks and you've got 2 gig, 4 gig or 8 gig sticks, you've got 3 products, 100 orders a day, 150, 300 orders a day, no problem.
That's it.
But if you've got something like you were saying, underwear, where you've got maybe 100 different types of products, then actually doing that picking and finding the stock is a bit more tricky.
And it's your existing, so there's whether your margin is an absolute key factor. Whether you're trying to build a brand and owning that end touch to the customer, how important is that? So for example, the company doing 150 orders a day, they've built their own brand. A lot of their customers are coming to them through Instagram. It's all about creating a community of fans around their product. Now for them, one incorrect order, even at that early stage, they know that could hurt them in terms of reputation. And you've already got a thing, if someone finds you via Instagram and they're in Australia, you've already got a trust problem. Like, before you've even done anything, they're thinking, is these guys going to take my money and never ship me anything? And all it takes is one comment on an Instagram post of, these guys are cheating scumbags who are never going to send me anything, I want my money back. And that can cost you tens of thousands of pounds. So I think it's thinking about the business model that you're in, trying to find, this is a really good way of doing it, looking at companies you want to be like and thinking, well, how do they do it? You know, can you find, if you really like, I remember Gymshark saw Surf Dome's logo on our website and they all shopped at Surf Dome and they were like, well, we want to be like Surf Dome, how do they do it? You know, we've seen their experience, and it's the same in your space. So for the other company, if you're doing automotive parts online, what are the competition using? You know, where are their logos popping up on different websites? And I think the other part to it is there are two types of people. Some like to do stuff early, before they're ready, and some like to wait till they're in a real pickle and then come in and try and clean up the mess behind them. It's a very fine balance.
So I'm guessing you'd probably recommend doing it early rather than late.
I think it's probably similar to having your first child. You're probably never going to feel like you're ready, but then when it happens, you probably think, yeah, that was the right time, because you work out a way to cope, and the sophistication takes you on to the next thing that you're thinking about.
So what I'm really picking up from you is talking about the owners of that business never actually having to work in the warehouse again, is the fact that with a good system in place, you can actually do more work with less people. So either when peak comes, you're not going to have to get a whole load of temporary staff in who then you've immediately got to train, because your existing staff can take up the slack, or perhaps as you grow, your existing employees can do more in the same number of hours.
Yeah, I can actually remember how I explained it to this the first time. We've got a graph that shows the number of people that work in all of the roles in a business. And what I'd encourage anyone to do is just a little X and Y axis, and along the bottom, just put the different functions of their business, and on the left-hand side, put the number of people that work in each department. And if you do that graph, and you have significantly more people in your business doing order fulfillment, pick, pack, dispatch, and that's growing at a faster rate than your other departments, you've really got to think about, is that where you want to be investing more and more of your money, versus focusing on product differentiation, marketing, opening up new sales channels, which is what you can start to do by investing in other departments, like bringing on more merchandisers, for example.
Fantastic. And you say a lot of people wait until their business is in such a state that it's kind of it's too late. How do you actually know if there was a point in the business that this is happening in my warehouse too frequently? Is it that I'm getting too many mispicked parcels? Is it that I'm never ready when the courier arrives and I'm missing my cut-off times? Is it that peak comes along and I know I'm going to be desperately busy? What's the one thing that really would make someone look at this?
Well, for us, I mean, when Oliver and I first spoke, one of the key things he talked about is that he could stop the in-house fighting that was happening in the warehouse. And because what would happen for us is that every day, come 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we just had a frantic search because we became a victim of our own success in a way. Our sales were increasing so rapidly, but if we can't get our orders out on time, then that causes more frustration than just not selling the product in the first place. So we became so focused. Every afternoon we'd have to be in the warehouse trying to get people to go through boxes and boxes and boxes to try and find a pair of briefs to match a bra so that we could dispatch an order. And it was just far too time consuming. That was it. That's all we did all day, every day, was look for products. When deliveries came in, it took us hours to put it away. We were writing things down on pieces of paper. Some people would write down, they'd put stock in the wrong location. They'd transpose the numbers down incorrectly. They wouldn't hand it up to the office. The office didn't type it into the database on the system. It was just chaos. It just didn't make it a nice environment to work in. We were spent too much time doing the types of jobs that nobody wants to do, just trying to look for products. And that's really what appealed to us most, was that we could actually just ensure that our orders were out on time. We wouldn't sell anything that we didn't have. And then we could focus on the other areas of our business for growth rather than getting the orders out.
So I think it's a really interesting business you got there, Melissa. And I know that when you came into the business with Claire, one of your briefs was to organise systems and processes. What were the first things you did with the warehouse to try and make it run more efficiently? Did you come in on day one and say, yeah, I need software to sort this out? Or were there things that you could do in the warehouse to actually make the business run better before you went to invest in software?
Well, we did have some key steps. I mean, we used other software before, and everything was recorded. But the system that was in place when I joined the company meant that wherever the stock was put away, the SKU was tied into the location of the stock, which meant you could never ever move it, because the information was ingrained. So the first thing we did was everything became labelled, everything became organised. We thought about the structure, where you put the stock, etc. But we were just constantly constrained because we couldn't document what we were doing and keep up with what we were doing, in terms of moving things or redesigning things or getting new stock in. We just couldn't do it by writing it down on bits of paper and then taking it up to the office. And we used to have a box full of slips of paper because the lady in the office whose job it was to update the system took a couple of days off, and so then those bits of paper would get lost under a desk and we just couldn't find anything. So yeah, we had some key steps first, but we knew the problem that we had was that our systems couldn't keep up with what we were manually doing.
So just too much volume of stock, too many employees to remember where it is, too many orders coming in that need picking.
Yeah, I mean, when we moved over to Peoplevox, we had 170,000 items, unique items in our warehouse that we had to scan in. So prior to that, we had a lady in the office who was affectionately known as the Oracle, because she could remember where everything was. But other than that, we were bringing people in, and people were then, we were putting pressure on people to pick faster. People couldn't pick faster because they didn't know where anything was, and then they were going to the bin and it wasn't in the bin, and then it would cause frustration. But 170,000, one of the first things we had to do was a complete stock take. We'd never done a stock take before. So in 2 years, we'd never done a stock take. Moving to our new system, we had to do a stock take, which felt like a nightmare at the time, to actually just do that stock take. But we did that in 6 weeks. 10 days after our move, I went home on a Friday and I said to my partner, we did a stock take today in the warehouse. And he sort of looked at me and he said, okay, you've got a warehouse, so you did a stock take, what's the big deal? And I said, we've never ever managed to complete the pick on time and be able to do a stock take on a normal working day before. And that was in 10 days of us moving to our new system. That's how quickly we were able to increase our pick rate.
That's pretty fantastic. So for those people that don't know Peoplevox, can you tell me, when you come in the morning, what does it look like? What does it do? I mean, I come in, I go to eBay, I go to Amazon, I've got my website, I've got some other sites, I get a load of orders coming in. What does Peoplevox do for me, really, on a day-to-day basis in the warehouse?
Well, so here's the really sad bit. It's not about when I come in the morning, it's when I get up in the morning. I go downstairs to my PC at home and I log onto the system. I can see how many orders I've had overnight. And what I can do from that is make quick decisions about, do we need people focused on picking today, packing today, etc. So you bring up the system tells you how many orders that you've got. You then decide how many people you want to put on the pick, how they're going to pick it, etc. And you can focus on, do you want to get so for example, we do a lot of deals. So on some days we might want to focus on getting the deals out first. On other days we might want to leave it. So we actually have granularity in deciding what we dispatch first. Sometimes after a holiday you might need to get Amazon orders out before eBay orders out, or vice versa. So you can look into Peoplevox, you can quickly assess how much work you have to do, and then you can make very quick decisions on how you want to break your day up and how you want to focus and prioritize the order in which you dispatch.
And then that's before you even get into the office. When you get into the warehouse, how does Peoplevox tell me what the first order to pick is, or where the location of the product is? How does it actually work in the warehouse?
When we interview for pickers now, the first question that we ask them is, what do you do with your mobile phone? And if people are good with a mobile phone, then they're good at picking. It's they'll have a handset that they carry around with them. They look at the handset, and it is really as simple as the handset says, go to box A and pick product B and put it in a tub. Go to box B and pick the next product and put it in your tub. Before, we had a couple of guys who, what we call them our top pickers, and we'd try and work out what people were picking. Our top guys could pick, on a very, very good day, they could pick 200 items. These days, we could comfortably pick 200 items in much less than an hour and have no don't haves out of those 200 items.
So it's massively increased, not just speed, but also the accuracy that your guys can work out?
We can see who can pick. We know now if we take new people on, I mean, apart from asking them whether or not they're good with a handset, we can tell within 3 hours if somebody has the right aptitude to be a picker. Because there's a real skill in the number recognition, in making sure that you can pick quickly. We've got all of that visibility. We can make decisions, on exceptionally busy days. So after bank holidays or in the holiday period, Black Friday, etc. We can make decisions at 1 o'clock if we know that we haven't got a certain batch of orders that need to be out. We can then partition it and focus on where we need to focus. So it's really granular, and having spent hours and hours going through 70 bins trying to find a single pair of briefs that nobody could remember where we put it, to be able to sit at a PC or look at a handset and type in a SKU and find where 5 items that match that particular SKU are within seconds. I can't, it's phenomenal peace of mind actually when you're working in a highly pressured environment trying to get the orders out.
Fantastic. That's a really good insight into how you work and how the solution has helped you. So basically, I think what I'd sum this up is it's never too early to start optimizing your warehouse, and whether you are working from a bedroom or a garage, or whether you've got a small warehouse, or whether you've got a big warehouse with 30 or 40 people working in it or bigger, making it efficient, as you say, someone that used to pick 200 items a day can now pick 200 in an hour or so, makes an absolute massive difference. Oliver, is there anything you'd like to add to there?
No, I think you overviewed it brilliantly. I think one thing that I picked up on when you described it, you talked about your stock take or that initial inventory count, and it's something that often scares people, just the thought of having to take on that body of work to go around and count everything. I'm always asked, is there any way we could put your system in without doing a stock take? And 99 times out of 100, we find that the inventory file just isn't accurate enough to simply import the stock figures. You need to go and do that count. I think if you've explained this to me before, but if you could just explain how you went about, obviously you didn't just do the stock take in a day and throw everybody at it. What was the logic around it, organising it so you could, the method to actually getting it done? And I think you actually took some measures to bring in additional people.
Yeah, well, I was that person. I looked at the warehouse, and you guys told me that before I could change to the software, we had to do a stock take. I did plead on several occasions because we just did not want to do it. It was an overwhelming thought. We knew how many boxes we had in the warehouse, so I walked around the warehouse and counted how many boxes. We had somebody scan the items in one box, and we worked out how long it took to do that, and then we just calculated, if we assumed that there were that many items in that many boxes, how long it would take to plan that in and do it. For us, we ended up having 6 people full time for 6 weeks. They were people that hadn't worked for us before. They literally would come in and scan products. The fallout from that was phenomenal, because we had wrong barcodes on products, we had products without barcodes, we had products we didn't know we had. We had products we thought we'd sold out from. So then we had to split it up and focus on sort of 95% of the products that we could scan in, and we ended up with a stack and a pile of products that actually we just had to leave and focus on moving to our migration. In the end, we did it on time. The day before we were due to migrate, we had a number of boxes we hadn't scanned, but we knew that we could focus on that afterwards. But it required meticulous planning, but that's all it was really. It's just meticulous planning. And within days, the don't haves, the fact that we weren't having to email customers, because what we said we had in the warehouse, we had in the warehouse. Actually, the pain of those 6 weeks, it was worth it very quickly, within 24, 48 hours.
Fantastic. We've got one question coming for you, I think, Oliver.
Yeah.
I would appreciate some practical suggestions on storing and picking for a small business model. The items stay in original boxes and are stacked with no shelving.
Okay.
Use an order management platform that allows a picking list and bin locations. So imagine that you've got a warehouse and maybe you're selling shoes or whatever it is, and you get a box of one sort of shoe come in, a box of another, a box of another. How could they make their warehouse a bit more efficient?
I get it. I've been in many of these warehouses, So in terms of order management system, I think similar to this, using the back end of something like Limworks or Volo would give you an order management system, or even the back end of Magento, where you can print a picking list, and usually if you can assign a bin to a product, you can only assign one bin. And then when you print off the picking sheet, you can print the picking sheet in the order of the bins, which I think is a really good start, because you're using the logic of trying to find the fastest route through the warehouse. It works well. One thing that you might want to think about is I've always seen it to be a bit of a toss-up between whether it's worth assigning a bin ID to products where you're maintaining the product location manually. I've seen a lot of manual warehouses work really well, where they sort the products based on the SKU code, or they sort products into categories, and then within the category they organise based on SKU. I actually think that can be a faster manual method, because you're not introducing the complexity of maintaining a bin location but doing it manually. Challenge of introducing bin locations and doing it manually is you're creating another management process where ultimately what's going to happen is you're going to tell someone off because they've not updated the right Google Sheet, or you've not gone back to the system and put something in, and it can turn into a bit of a blame game versus trying to use practical methods, which I tend to find work better with the majority of warehouse staff. They can, when they put something on a shelf, they'll put it one SKU code down because they know that's where it lives. But bin IDs, if they're not dynamic, the benefit from what I've seen is fairly marginal. So yeah, think about scrapping that and sorting by SKU. You might think I'm totally wrong though. That's okay.
I think it's a bit difficult without knowing what the product is. I don't know if they're talking about shoebox-sized items, or maybe they're talking sort of earrings which are in tiny boxes and more difficult to find.
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss it with them if they'd like to know more.
By all means, either drop a comment on Tamebay or send us an email. I'd like to thank both you, Oliver, and especially Melissa, for coming in today. If anyone wants some more information, there's some links on the screen to a Peoplevox 10 ways of making your warehouse more efficient, some great tips in there, and also a guide to buying a warehouse management system, what you should be looking for. And of course, feel free to contact Peoplevox if you'd like more consultation on your warehouse and how a warehouse management system could help you.
Yeah. I'd just say the only thing on that in terms of how we work, we really focus on two parts. The first part is trying to understand the technology that you've got, how things fit into the existing technology, and what your roadmap looks like. So we don't just think about, oh, you need a WMS, we're going to, that's the thing to do. It might be you need to move from WooCommerce to Shopify, or maybe think about upgrading to Channel Advisor. We have that conversation because we understand the partner ecosystem. And then the other part is really trying to educate your warehouse team and the people in the business on the e-commerce best practice. Our technology delivers it, but you need to understand the basic principles. So that's where we spend the majority of our time with people.
So it is really, there's no point having a great, fantastic system like Peoplevox if you don't have any best practices in your warehouse in the first place.
You need to understand the basics before you try and automate anything. And I think it's really easy, particularly in logistics, to get caught up in all the acronyms and the fancy stuff and the videos of Amazon and how they're doing everything. It shouldn't, if you're thinking about logistics and it seems scary, or even if you know a bit, I think part of the art of something that can be complicated is to talk about it in a simple way. And that's really what we try to do in how we take people through from not having a warehouse to how to run a really efficient, scalable one.
Fantastic, thanks Oliver. And we will be making this full presentation available on Tamebay TV very shortly. So thank you for your time today, and once again, Melissa, Oliver, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, thanks.
Bye.